In the quiet spaces between waking and sleep, there are stories waiting. Ancient stories, worn smooth by time, like river stones cradled in the palm of memory. Welcome, dear traveler, to Sleeping Pill Tales. I'm here to guide you on a journey tonight, not one of urgency or destination, but of gentle wandering, toward rest, toward peace. Tonight, we travel to the edge of the world itself, to a garden veiled in eternal twilight, where golden apples glow like captured sunsets, and the daughters of evening, the Hesperides, 10 trees older than mortal memory. This is a place where the sea whispers secrets to the shore, where a great serpent coils protectively around treasures divine, and where heroes have journeyed seeking immortality, only to discover something far more profound. So settle now. Let your body sink into softness. Release the day like sand slipping through open fingers. Breathe slowly, and let us begin. Our tale unfolds in a time before time, at the very edge of the world. Settle into comfort, and allow yourself to drift back to the very beginning of time, to a world of primordial whispers and starlit destinies. This tale of the cosmos unfolds slowly, like the gentle, inevitable turning of the celestial spheres. Let the words wash over you, a soft river of myth carrying you toward peaceful, dreamless rest. In a time before time was measured, before the first dawn had been dreamed into being, there was only a presence, a state of being so vast and so profound that the ancient poets could only name it chaos. It was not the chaos of disorder or confusion as we might understand it now, but something older, deeper, and more fundamental. It was a yawning void, a gaping nothingness that held within its silent heart the potential for all things. It was not evil, nor was it good. It was not light, nor was it dark. It simply was. A deep and endless breath, held in the eternal moment before the first word of creation was spoken. From this ancient nothing, this silent womb of all existence, the first stirrings of life emerged. Not as gods, not yet, but as elemental truths, as concepts given form and consciousness. The first to arise was Gaia, the earth. She was vast and unshaking, a broad and endless plain of fertile potential, solid and sure amidst the formless void. From the same profound depths came Tartarus, the abyss beneath the earth, a realm of such profound darkness and depth that it was a presence in its own right, dreadful and deep. And then came Eros, the force of love and desire, the beautiful and binding agent of all future creation, the pull that would bring form to formlessness and union to isolation. Then came Nyx, the night, clothed in a shadow so thick and velvety that even the formless chaos seemed to recoil from its absolute embrace. She was followed by her brother, Erebus, the very darkness of the underworld, and together they dwelt in that early, profound silence. From their union, a beautiful balance was born, ether, the pure, bright upper air that the gods themselves would one day breathe, and Hemra, the day, who from her very beginning was fated to chase her mother endlessly, lovingly, across the vault of the sky. Thus, the first great rhythm of the cosmos was established, the gentle, endless cycle of night and day, born not of science, but of myth, a family of vast, invisible powers who lit and dimmed the heavens with each slow, patient passing hour. And Gaia, the earth, did not lie idle. She was patient, and she was fertile, and from her own boundless body, she brought forth Uranus, the sky. He was vast and star-strewn, an arching, celestial dome that stretched from one horizon to the other. He was both her son and her consort, and when he arched over her, covering her completely, the world found its first, perfect shape, the broad earth cradled by the starry heavens. Gaia also birthed the mountains, tall and wild, their peaks reaching upward as if in silent conversation with their father, and Pontus, the sea, who surged with a will and a voice of his own, long before the first ship or sea monster ever dared to touch his shifting, silvered waters. This was the very beginning, a world of immense, silent forces, of potential sleeping within the deep, dark soil, of stars waiting to be kindled in the sky above. It is from this deep, quiet peace that our longer story slowly, gently, begins to unfold, a dream taking shape in the mind of the sleeping earth. The union of Gaia and Uranus, of earth and sky, was the first great marriage of the cosmos. It was not a marriage of altars or witness vows, but one of necessity and nature, of profound, elemental connection. Each night, the star-strewn body of Uranus would descend, pressing down to meet the fertile plains of Gaia, holding her in a close, celestial embrace. The air was warm and thick with the scent of rich, dark soil, of stones still cool from the retreating day, and of something else, something like the electric potential that hangs in the air before a gentle summer rain. The only sound was the soft, sighing breath of the world itself, a low, humming vibration that resonated through the very bones of the earth. From this union, the first generation of powerful beings was born, the Titans. There were 12 in all, 6 sons and 6 daughters, each vast and elemental in their own right. There was Oceanus, the great, encircling river that flowed around the edge of the world, his waters fresh and clear. There was Hyperion, the Lord of Light, who would later father the sun and the moon. There was Ceus, the Inquirer, and Crius, the constellation bearer. There was Iapetus, who would become the ancestor of mankind, and Cronus, the youngest, who possessed a watchful, patient, and cunning heart. Among the daughters were Thea, the shining one, Rhea, of gentle strength and deep wisdom, the future mother of gods, Themis, the embodiment of divine law and order, Mnemosyne, the memory of all things, from whom the muses would spring, Phoebe, the radiant one, and Tethys, the nourishing sea, who would become the wife of Oceanus. They moved through the world with a slow, ponderous grace, their footsteps like the settling of mountains, their voices the rumble of distant, slumbering volcanoes. The world they inhabited was one of breathtaking, silent beauty. Sunlight, filtered through the crystalline air of aether, fell upon the land in soft, golden waves, illuminating vast meadows where strange, luminous flowers bloomed without any hand to tend them. Forests of ancient, towering trees stretched towards the heavens, their leaves whispering secrets in a language older than words. The mountains, Gaia's own children, stood sentinel, their peaks wearing crowns of pure, white cloud, their slopes clad in the deep green of pine and fir. And everywhere, the sound of water, the soft plash of springs bubbling up from the dark heart of the earth, the gentle rush of streams meandering through stone-cut valleys, the rhythmic, soothing crash of Pontus's waves upon endless, deserted shores. This was the age of the Titans, a long, peaceful twilight of the world, where life was simple, vast, and uncomplicated by the passions and politics that would later define the cosmos. It was a world of immense, quiet power, a garden of the gods before the first seed of discord was sown. But Gaia's womb was not yet finished. She bore other children, beings of such raw, untamed strength and strange appearance that they seemed to belong to a different order of creation altogether. First came the Cyclopes, Brontes, Steropes, and Argesh. Each had a single, round eye burning like a forge fire in the center of his broad forehead. They were simple beings, smiths and craftsmen of immense power, who feared no god nor giant, their hearts as straightforward and uncomplicated as the lightning they would one day learn to forge. Then came the Hecatonchires, the 100-handed ones, Cottus, Briareos, and Gyges. Each was enormous, terrible, and wonderful to behold, with 50 heads and 100 powerful arms emerging from their colossal shoulders. When they moved, they could stir the very foundations of the world, their strength like the shifting of tectonic plates deep beneath the earth. Uranus, the sky, though vast and powerful, looked upon these monstrous offspring not with wonder, but with revulsion and a deep, gnawing fear. He saw in their grotesque strength not the diversity of his mate's creativity, but a direct threat to his own dominion. In his shame and terror, he acted with swift, cruel judgment. As each of these children was born, he forced them back into the depths of Gaia's womb, into the dark, suffocating confines of the earth itself, and sealed them there, hidden away beneath layers of impenetrable rock and profound grief. Gaia groaned beneath their weight. The earth, once proud and nurturing, now suffered with every breath. It was not only the physical agony of bearing these mighty children within her again, but the bitter, searing pain of betrayal. Her consort, the sky, who should have cherished their creations as she did, had instead rejected them, imprisoned them, and in doing so, had imprisoned a part of her as well. Night after night, he continued to descend upon her, pressing down the heavens to meet the earth, blind to her pain and deaf to her silent, weeping grief. She could endure it no longer. And so, from her own deep, enduring flesh, she fashioned a weapon. Not of bronze or iron, for such things had not yet been dreamed into existence, but a great sickle, its blade crafted from unyielding, gray flint, jagged as hard truth and sharp as cold vengeance. Then, with the weapon hidden, she went to her Titan sons, the firstborn and mightiest among her children, and she laid bare her suffering. "Your father has wronged me," she said, her voice the low rumble of an earthquake gathering its strength far below. "He has caged your brothers within my own body. He has silenced the very womb that bore you all. Who among you will aid me? Who will take up this blade and deliver us from this tyranny?" One by one, the Titans turned away, their faces pale, their hearts gripped by a cold fear of their father's immeasurable might. They bowed their heads and retreated into the shadows, unwilling to challenge the Lord of the starry sky. Only the youngest, Cronus, the one with the watchful eyes and the patient, calculating heart, stepped forward. He looked upon his mother's pain, and he looked upon the jagged blade of flint, and he saw not only a weapon, but an opportunity. "I will do it," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Give me the blade." And so Gaia set the trap. She waited for Uranus to descend as he always did, laying himself across her in the deep, expectant dark. And from the shadows, where the starlight could not reach, Cronus sprang. With a steady hand and without a moment of hesitation, he brought the sickle down upon his father. The sky itself shook with the cry of Uranus, a sound of tearing fabric and shattering crystal, as the flint blade bit deep, severing the source of his power and his reign. Cronus cast the bloodied flesh into the restless sea, and from the crimson foam that rose upon the waves, something new and wondrous was born. A figure of impossible beauty, terrible and irresistible in equal measure, rose from the white froth. She was Aphrodite, the goddess of love and desire, and she stepped ashore at Cyprus, radiant and serene, her skin gleaming with sea spray, her eyes holding the deep, mysterious pull of the ocean, untouched by the violence of her own origin. But Gaia's vengeance did not end with that single, decisive act. From the droplets of blood that fell upon the rich, brown earth, other beings sprang forth, the Erinyes, or Furies, cloaked in shadows and vengeance, who would haunt oathbreakers and kinslayers until the very end of days, the giants, fierce and strong, who in time would rise up against the gods themselves, and the Melee, the nymphs of the ash trees, graceful guardians of the wild and the old, deep-rooted ways of the world. Uranus, wounded and dethroned, vanished into the high, unreachable heavens, leaving the world to his children. But before he fled, it is said he spoke a final curse, one that would ring through time like a mournful bell. "Just as I was overthrown by my son," he declared, his voice fading into the wind, "so too shall you be overthrown by your own." It was not a prophecy he invented, but a truth that Gaia, in her wisdom and her wrath, had already whispered into the fabric of fate. And Cronus, now holding the sickle, its blade still remembering its grim work, heard the words well. He took the sky throne and wrapped himself in power, but from the very moment he grasped it, a seed of fear was planted deep within his heart, a fear that would grow and shape the next stage of the world. Thus ended the reign of Uranus, the first king of the cosmos, and thus began the age of the Titans. The sky, no longer pressed so tightly upon the earth, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, lifting higher, allowing the air to circulate freely. The world felt lighter, freer, and for a time, a fragile peace descended. Cronus, now the ruler, took his sister Rhea as his wife and queen. She was a Titaness of immense power, but it was a power of a different kind, a power of nurturing, of deep, abiding strength, of a wisdom that ran as deep as the roots of the world. Together they ruled from the great throne of the cosmos, and their reign began what the poets would later remember as the golden age of mortals. It was a time of perfect peace and harmony, a time untouched by sorrow, or toil, or the slow, creeping shadow of decay. The earth provided everything that was needed. The seasons were gentle and unchanging, a perpetual, warm spring. Fruits hung heavy and ripe from the boughs of trees without any need for planting or tending. Fields of grain waved their golden heads in the soft breeze, offering their bounty freely. Mortals, newly created, lived lives of quiet contentment. They did not age as we understand aging. Instead, when their long, peaceful lives reached their natural conclusion, they simply passed away as if falling into a deep, dreamless sleep. Their spirits did not descend to a gloomy underworld, but remained on the earth as benevolent, watchful guardians, invisible protectors of justice and peace. There were no cities, no walls, no armies. There were no swords, no plows, no ships. There was no need for laws, for justice moved unseen among humankind, a natural force as present and as gentle as the air they breathed. Doors were never locked, for there was nothing to fear. The concept of theft, of betrayal, of violence was unknown. It was a world of innocence, a world that lived in a state of grace, the closest any mortal would ever come to walking in the gardens of the gods. Cronus and Rhea looked out upon this peaceful world from their celestial throne. Yet, for Cronus, the peace was a fragile shell, and beneath it, the fear planted by his father's curse grew like a persistent, thorny vine. He enjoyed the fruits of his rule, the adulation, the power, but his heart was cautious and suspicious. The sickle he had used to wound Uranus remained hidden, buried in a secret place within the earth, its flint blade a cold, hard reminder of what a son could do to a father. And then, Rhea began to bear children. With each pregnancy, the fear within Cronus grew from a whisper to a roar. He remembered the prophecy, the curse that he himself had helped to fulfill. He would not suffer the same fate. He would be wiser, more ruthless, than his father. And so, when Rhea presented him with their firstborn child, a daughter named Hestia, Cronus did not hesitate. He took the infant, and with a grim resolve, he opened his jaws wide and swallowed her whole. Not a trace was left, not a cry, not a cradle, only the terrible, silent knowledge that she was gone, hidden within her father's belly like a seed in cold, winter soil. He told Rhea it was necessary, that he would not risk the throne, that the stability of the cosmos demanded this sacrifice. Rhea, though possessed of a deep and powerful strength, was, in that moment, powerless against him. She wept, but her tears, falling like warm summer rain upon the soil, changed nothing. The same fate befell their next children, the goddess Demeter, radiant with the promise of the harvest, the proud and sharp-eyed Hera, the stern Hades, and the powerful Poseidon. 5 times Rhea gave birth, and 5 times she lost her children to the all-consuming hunger of her husband's fear. Each loss was a stone added to the weight of her sorrow, a sorrow that began to stain the edges of the golden age, a subtle shadow falling across the perfect, sunlit fields. But the 6th time she was with child, Rhea, her heart breaking under the strain of so much grief, resolved to act. She could not bear to lose another. The love for this unborn child was a fire that burned brighter than her fear. When she felt the child stir within her womb, a child whose presence felt different, whose destiny seemed to hum with a power that vibrated through the very air, she did not go to Cronus. Instead, under the cover of a night draped in the soft, black velvet of Nyx's cloak, she fled. She traveled to the wild, rugged island of Crete, where the mountains reached for the stars and deep, hidden caves opened like secret mouths in the belly of the earth. There, in a cave high on the slopes of Mount Ida, hidden among simple shepherds and the whispering, watchful nymphs of the place, she gave birth to her youngest son, Zeus. And from the moment of his birth, Rhea knew he was different. His cry was not the mewling of an infant, but a sound that shook the leaves of the sacred oak trees outside the cave. His eyes, a deep, stormy gray, opened and focused with an ancient knowing before he had even drawn his first breath. And when his small hand grasped her finger, he held it with the strength of fate itself, a grip that promised both creation and upheaval. To deceive Cronus, Rhea devised a plan. She took a large stone from the riverbed, a stone worn smooth by the ceaseless flow of water over countless years, and she wrapped it in soft, white swaddling clothes. Then, with a heart pounding like a distant drum, she returned to her husband and presented the bundled stone to him, her hands trembling not with weakness, but with a mother's fierce, protective rage. Cronus, suspecting nothing, his mind clouded by his own paranoia, took the swaddled stone and, without a second glance, swallowed it greedily, believing the last and greatest danger to his throne had passed. But beneath Mount Ida, the infant Zeus was nursed in secret. He was guarded by the Curetes, fierce warriors who danced and clashed their bronze shields together in a rhythmic, thunderous cacophony, their stomping feet and clanging metal drowning out the sound of the infant's powerful cries. And he was fed by the divine goat, Amalthea, whose rich, warm milk gave him strength and vitality beyond mortal measure. From her broken horn, torn by accident or perhaps by divine omen, flowed an endless bounty, the first cornucopia, a symbol of the nourishment and prosperity he would one day bring. As Zeus grew from a babe to a boy, and from a boy to a man, so too did the storm gather, the storm that would one day break the world of the Titans and usher in a new order. Yet for now, the age of Cronus held. The sky was high and clear, the earth was green and bountiful, and the Titans ruled from their thrones, largely oblivious to the gathering wind of change. But deep within the belly of Cronus, 5 divine children stirred in the dark, waiting. And far to the west, on a mountain in Crete, a young god, born in secrecy and raised in the wild, watched the stars and waited, his patient heart beating in time with the turning of the cosmos. Zeus, now a young man, often sat at the mouth of the cave on Mount Ida as the sun began its slow descent. He would watch the light change, the way the golden rays of late afternoon slanted through the pine trees, painting long, soft shadows across the rocky slopes. The air was thin and clean, carrying the scent of dry earth, of pine resin, of wild thyme crushed under the feet of the grazing goats. The wind whispered through the stones, a constant, gentle companion, murmuring ancient names and half-forgotten secrets. From this high place, he could see the endless expanse of the sea, a sheet of beaten silver stretching to the edge of the world, where it met the soft, hazy blue of the sky. He felt a deep connection to this vastness, a pull in his blood towards the wide heavens above. It was a feeling of home, of a destiny written in the constellations that would soon begin to prick the darkening velvet of the night. He would sit there for hours, perfectly still, listening, learning, feeling the immense, slow heartbeat of the world, a heartbeat that was soon to quicken. The hidden god on the mountain was not left to his own devices for long. Gaia, the ancient Earth Mother, had not forgotten. She remembered the betrayal of Cronus, who had taken the throne but had not freed her monstrous sons, the Cyclopes and the Hecatonkars, from their deep prison in Tartarus. Her vengeance, it seemed, was a patient, long-running river, and it had not yet reached its sea. She began to stir in the deep places of the world, and her stirrings found their way into the dreams of her grandson, Zeus. With words as old as stone and as patient as the growing of roots, she whispered truths into his sleeping mind, truths about his father, his swallowed siblings, and his own glorious destiny. In his waking hours, she guided his steps, a subtle pressure in the earth beneath his feet, a knowing that bloomed in his heart like a night-blooming flower. Following this deep, instinctual pull, she led him first to Métis, the Titaness of wisdom, whose counsel was as shrewd as it was far-seeing. Métis dwelt in a clear, sun-dappled grove where a spring of fresh water bubbled up from between the roots of a great, ancient oak. She was a being of pure, clear thought, and she saw the threads of the future with a clarity that others lacked. With Metis's aid, Zeus fashioned a plan that relied not on brute strength alone, but on a deep and cunning wisdom. To strike against Cronus, a king of Titans who had ruled for eons, would require more than a frontal assault. It would demand subtlety, and it would demand a kind of magic that could turn a king's own fear against him. And so, when the time was right, Zeus left the safety of Crete and returned to the great hall of his father, but he did not go as a conquering hero. He went in disguise as a humble cupbearer, his divine radiance hidden, his stormy eyes downcast. There, with a potion crafted by Metis's clever hands, a draught laced into a sweet, dark wine, bittersweet and thick as golden honey, he approached the throne of Cronus. The Titan king, weary from his long reign and the constant, gnawing fear in his gut, accepted the cup without suspicion. He drank deeply, the potion stirring something in his belly, something that had lain dormant for centuries. It churned and roiled, and at last, with a great, shuddering groan that echoed through the hall, Cronus vomited forth the children he had swallowed long ago. They came not as infants, but full-grown and gleaming, clad in the strength and power of gods, reborn into a world that was already poised for war. First came Hestia, the gentle goddess of the hearth and its sacred, eternal flame. Then came Demeter, her hair the color of ripe wheat, her presence bringing the scent of fertile soil and blooming flowers. Then emerged Hera, regal and proud, her eyes sharp and knowing, a queen in her own right. Then came Hades, his demeanor already stern and quiet, his eyes holding the deep shadows of the place he would one day rule. And finally, with a roar that shook the very pillars of the hall, came Poseidon, his hair wild like the sea foam, his presence charged with the raw power of the deep ocean. The 6 siblings stood together for the first time, a united front of divine power, and they looked upon the throne that had cast them into darkness. They would not forget. They would not forgive. The call to arms went out across the cosmos. Cronus, though shaken, was still a Titan, and he was not without powerful allies. His brothers and sisters, the other Titans, all save for Oceanus, who remained neutral in his watery domain, gathered to him. They rallied at Mount Othrys, the ancient, time-worn seat of their power in the south. Ceus and Crius, Hyperion and Iapetus, they took up arms, their forms vast and terrible, their voices like the crashing of continents. So began the war the poets would call the Titanomachy, the clash of the Titans, a conflict that would tear across the heavens for 10 long years and split the earth to its very core. The battles were terrible and unrelenting, a spectacle of primal forces unleashed. The sky darkened with storm clouds and the smoke of divine conflict. Thunder, the new weapon of Zeus, echoed across the mountains, and fire, both celestial and volcanic, scarred the once pristine landscapes. The world below, still young and populated by the silent, watching mortals of the Silver Age, looked on in dread as its masters fought for the right to rule all creation. The Titans, from their fortress at Othrys, hurled mountains. The Olympians, making their stand upon the unscarred peak of Mount Olympus, answered with lightning and tidal waves. For a decade, it seemed the war would never end, a bloody stalemate between the old order and the new. But Gaia, ever watchful, knew that the balance could not tip without the aid of what had been long buried. She counseled Zeus once more, her voice a tremor in the foundation of Olympus. If he were to win, he must be willing to do what his father had not. He must descend into the deepest, blackest pit of Tartarus and free his monstrous uncles, the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires, whom Cronus had kept locked in chains of adamant, bound by the same fear that had once imprisoned Uranus. It was a perilous journey, a descent into the absolute antithesis of the bright, airy world. But Zeus, with his siblings Hades and Poseidon beside him, ventured into the underworld. They passed the 5 rivers of the dead, the Styx of hatred, the Acheron of sorrow, the Phlegethon of fire, the Cocytus of lamentation, and the Lethe of forgetfulness. The air grew cold and still, the light faded to a perpetual twilight, and the only sounds were the faint, mournful whispers of the dead. At last they broke the gates of Tartarus itself, a place of such profound darkness that it seemed to swallow sound and light and hope itself. There, in the deepest dungeon, they found the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires, bound in chains that had rusted into their flesh, their immense strength wasted in the endless dark. The gratitude of these ancient beings was as immense as their forms. The Cyclopes, eager and skilled, immediately set to work at a divine forge they conjured from the very fires of the earth. To Zeus, they gifted his greatest weapons, the thunderbolt, jagged and brilliant, the ultimate symbol of sky and storm, judgment made manifest. To Poseidon, they gave the trident, a three-pronged spear with which he could command the very seas, stirring them to rage or soothing them to a glassy calm. And to Hades, they presented a helm of darkness, crafted from the shadows of Tartarus, which would render its wearer completely unseen, a gift of stealth and fear. The Hecatonchires, stretching their 100 arms each, their 50 heads roaring with a fury that had been pent up for ages, joined the fight with a vengeance. They hurled mountains like stones, 300 arms working in concert, battering the Titans with the raw, untamed fury of the ancient earth itself. With these powerful new allies, the tide of the war turned irrevocably. The Olympians pressed forward with a coordinated fury that the individualistic Titans could not match. Cronus, proud and unyielding to the last, fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, but the prophecy, as always, unfolded without mercy. One by one, the Titans were driven down from the high places, their strength broken, their reign at an end. Zeus, in an act that echoed his father's but was born of strategic necessity rather than fear, did not slay them. Instead, he imprisoned them in the very pit from which he had just freed his uncles. Deep into Tartarus they were hurled, bound in chains forged by the 100-handed ones themselves, behind great, bronze gates that would never rust or break, guarded by the Hecatonchires, who now became the eternal wardens of their former jailers. Only a few Titans escaped this fate. Themis, the embodiment of divine law, who had foreseen the justice of the Olympian rule, was welcomed into the new court. Prometheus, the Titan of foresight, and his brother Epimetheus, of afterthought, who had sided with Zeus from the beginning, were spared, though their own stories would soon take complicated turns. So ended the reign of the Titans. The sky cleared of smoke and storm, and the world, scarred by fire and war, began its long, slow process of healing. The throne of the cosmos passed to Zeus, not by simple birthright, but by might, by wisdom, and by the relentless unfolding of fate. Yet even as he claimed the heavens, the shadow of his father's curse lingered behind him like the fading echo of an old, sad song. For power, once seized, must always be watched, and no ruler, god or mortal, sits secure forever. In the quiet that followed the war, the world seemed to hold its breath. Zeus stood upon the peak of Olympus, the new seat of power, and looked out upon his domain. The air was clean and sharp, washed by the recent storms. Below, the plains of Thessaly stretched out, green and peaceful once more. The rivers, which had run red with the blood of gods, now flowed clear and blue, reflecting the vast, open sky. The long, gentle slopes of the mountains were cloaked in the deep green of forests, and the sound of birdsong had returned, a sweet, tentative music after the decade of thunder. He could feel the weight of the thunderbolt in his hand, not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of responsibility. The wind, a soft, steady breeze from the west, carried the scent of the distant ocean and the promise of a new beginning. It was a moment of profound stillness, a pause in the relentless march of time, where the only movement was the slow drift of clouds across the endless blue and the gentle, healing breath of the earth itself. With the war concluded, the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, faced the monumental task of dividing the world. They gathered in a quiet, neutral place, a high meadow where the grass was soft and studded with wildflowers, and the sound of a nearby spring provided a constant, soothing murmur. The old laws of the cosmos, carved not on stone but into its very fabric, demanded that rule be shared. Conquest had been won together, and so the spoils would be divided together, lest the seeds of a new war be sown among them. And so, they cast lots, a sacred act guided by fate itself. They threw the marked bones into the air, and watched as they spun and fell, their landing dictating the structure of the world for eons to come. When they came to rest, the cosmos was drawn into three great dominions. To Zeus fell the sky, the broad heavens, the air between the stars and the mountain peaks. He became the lord of thunder and rain, the master of storm and cloud, the undisputed king of Olympus. His voice would echo in the thunderclaps that rolled across the land. His fury would blaze in the forked lightning that split the darkness, and the eagle, soaring high above all, became his herald and his symbol. To Poseidon fell the sea, deep and restless, a realm of endless mystery and ancient monsters. He took the oceans, the rivers, and every spring that bubbled from the dark heart of the earth. With his trident, he could shatter cliffs, stir the tides to a raging fury, or calm them to a mirror-like stillness. Beneath the waves, he would build a glorious palace of coral and gold, where he ruled not only over fish and currents, but over creatures older than time itself, sea serpents, leviathans, and things whose names had never been spoken aloud by mortal tongues. To Hades fell the underworld, the land of the dead. It was not a prize most would have chosen, a realm of shadows and silence, but Hades accepted it with a quiet, stoic resolve. He would rule the shadowed realm with stern dignity, his kingdom hidden beneath the earth where the sun never shone. There, he became the master of the shades, the judge of mortal souls, and the guardian of the wealth hidden in the deeps, gems, precious metals, and the secrets lost to time. Though men would fear his name and whisper it only when necessary, Hades kept the essential balance between life and death. And it was said, with a grim respect, that he never once broke the ancient laws he was sworn to uphold. The earth itself, Gaia's own flesh, was left as a common realm, shared by all the gods. The mountains belonged to no single deity, the fields were roamed by mortals and spirits alike, and the forests grew wild under no single banner. It was a realm in between, a place where gods might walk in disguise and mortals might, if they were lucky or blessed, catch a glimpse of the divine. But it was also the realm where human ambition brewed, where cities would be built and wars would be fought, and where fate would continue to work its quiet, inexorable will. Thus, the world was ordered sky, sea, and underworld. The three brothers, now kings in their own right, swore a solemn oath not to war among themselves, lest the world, so newly won, break apart again. They built their thrones and gathered their followers. On Mount Olympus, high above the clouds, Zeus called the gods to council. A new pantheon was formed, a family of powers that would become the heart of Greek religion and myth for centuries to come. There, beside Zeus, stood his sisters and his children. Hera, now his wife and queen, proud and sharp-eyed. Demeter, whose steps awakened the sleeping seeds in the soil. Hestia, who tended the eternal, communal hearth. Then came the younger generation, Athena, born fully grown and armored from Zeus's own head, the goddess of wisdom and strategic war. Apollo, golden-haired and radiant, the god of light, prophecy, music, and healing. His twin sister Artemis, silent and swift, the goddess of the hunt, the wild things, and the silver moon. Ares, the bloody-handed god of the brutal aspects of war, beloved by neither parent. Hephaestus, the brilliant, limping god of the forge and fire. Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and desire, who had risen from the sea foam. And Hermes, the swift-footed messenger, the guide of souls, the patron of travelers and thieves. This was the beginning of the age of Olympus, a new and glittering court of divine beings. But though the thrones had been set and the realms divided, the world would not stay still for long. The gods, for all their immense power, were not immune to pride, nor to love, nor to rage. And the mortals below, who now began to rise and build and dream across the face of the land, would bring with them their own stories, their own wars, and their own profound share of sorrow and joy. The heavens had been won, and a new order established. But peace, as ever, was a fragile, fleeting thing, and fate, the great weaver, had not yet spoken its final word. In the deep, quiet forests of Arcadia, where the sunlight filtered through the canopy and dappled golden coins, a new presence walked. It was the age of mortals, creatures shaped by the hands of the Titan Prometheus from the clay of the earth, animated by the divine spark. They were weak, these early humans, soft of skin and slow of foot, lacking claws or fangs or thick fur. They shivered in the cold of winter and were defenseless against the beasts of the wild. Prometheus, whose name meant forethought, looked upon them with a deep and abiding pity. He saw in them not the peril that Zeus saw, but promise, the potential for greatness. He went to Olympus and asked that they be given a gift to help them survive, to raise them above the level of mere animals. But Zeus, wary of any new power rising beneath his throne, refused. "Let them live," he declared, "but let them fear. Let them know their place beneath the gods." Fire, he said, was the privilege of the immortals alone. But Prometheus, stubborn and just, would not yield. His heart was filled with a love for this new, fragile creation. In secret, he climbed the slopes of Olympus and stole a single, glowing ember from the forge of Hephaestus, hiding it within a hollow fennel stalk. Carrying this precious, flickering treasure down to the world of men, he gave them the gift of fire. For the first time, fire crackled in the hearths of human homes, its light pushing back the terrifying darkness, its warmth guarding against the bitter cold. With fire came cooking, which softened food and made it more nourishing. With fire came metalworking, the ability to craft tools and weapons. With fire came language, huddled around the communal flame, and the arts, and civilization itself. Humanity, once cold and voiceless, began to build, to dream, to aspire. Zeus's fury upon discovering the theft was immense and terrible. To punish mankind for accepting this stolen gift, he commissioned the creation of a beautiful evil, a curse disguised as a blessing. He commanded Hephaestus to shape from clay and water a woman of perfect, breathtaking beauty. Athena clothed her in shimmering, silver raiment and taught her the domestic arts. Aphrodite bestowed upon her an irresistible charm and the power to inspire longing. Hermes gave her a cunning and deceitful mind, and a persuasive, flattering tongue. She was named Pandora, the all-gifted, and she was presented to the foolish Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, whose name meant afterthought. Despite his brother's warnings never to accept a gift from Zeus, Epimetheus was captivated by her beauty and took her into his home. With her, Pandora brought a large, sealed jar, mistranslated in later ages as a box. Driven by the curiosity the gods had planted within her, she one day lifted the lid. In that moment, all the sorrows that would henceforth plague humankind flew out into the world: disease, and toil, and grief, and madness, and envy, and old age, and death itself. They spread like a dark mist, settling over the once peaceful earth. Only one thing remained, trapped under the lip of the jar as Pandora slammed the lid back down: Elpis, hope. Some say it was an accident, that hope was meant to escape as well. Others say it was by design, a final, ambiguous gift from the gods, the capacity to endure the very evils they had unleashed. For his crime, Prometheus was punished with a torment of horrific, endless duration. Zeus ordered him chained to a desolate mountain in the Caucasus, bound in unbreakable, adamantine chains. Each day, a great eagle, the emblem of Zeus himself, would descend and tear open his flesh, feasting upon his liver. Each night, as Prometheus was immortal, the liver would grow back, whole and vulnerable, and each morning the agony would begin anew. He endured this for generations, for ages, his cries carried on the wind, a testament to the price of defying the gods and the power of compassionate foresight. Yet, even in his suffering, he held a secret, a piece of knowledge that gave him a strange power over the king of the gods. He knew the identity of the woman who would one day bear a son greater than his father, a son who would overthrow Zeus, just as Zeus had overthrown Cronus. It was this secret that kept him alive, bound but unbowed, a timeless symbol of resistance and endurance. The world of mortals was now a different place, a world of struggle and toil, but also of hope and resilience. The poet Hesiod would look back and see not one mankind, but many, each living in its own distinct age. The Golden Age was long gone, a memory of the reign of Cronus. Then came the Silver Age, a lesser race of men who lived as children for 100 years and died swiftly by the hand of Zeus for their arrogance. Then the Bronze Age, a fierce, hard race of men who lived for war and died by it, leaving nothing behind but shattered weapons. Then, a brief, brilliant interlude, the Heroic Age, the age of demigods and great quests, of Perseus and Heracles, of Jason and the Argonauts, of the warriors who fought at Troy. And finally, the Iron Age, the age in which Hesiod lived, and in which we still dwell, an age of sorrow, toil, and struggle, where justice is rare and oaths are cheap, but an age where hope, that last gift in Pandora's jar, still flickers, a small, steady flame in the gathering darkness. It was in this heroic age that the greatest of the Greek heroes walked the earth. Foremost among them was Heracles, the son of Zeus and the mortal woman Alcmene. His life was a tapestry woven with threads of immense strength and profound suffering, a cycle of triumph and tragedy dictated largely by the relentless jealousy of Hera. From his cradle, where he strangled the two serpents she sent to kill him, to the maddening fit she induced that led him to slaughter his own wife and children, his path was one of atonement. To purify himself, he undertook the 12 labors for his cousin, King Eurystheus, 12 impossible tasks that became the very measure of heroism. He strangled the Nemean lion, whose golden hide was impervious to weapons. He slew the many-headed Lernaean hydra, in whose venomous blood he dipped his arrows. He captured the Ceryneian hind, sacred to Artemis, and the fearsome Erymanthian boar. He cleansed the vast Augean stables in a single day by diverting 2 rivers. He drove away the monstrous Stymphalian birds. He captured the fire-breathing Cretan bull and the man-eating mares of Diomedes. He retrieved the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, and the red cattle of the 3-bodied giant Geryon. He journeyed to the edge of the world to steal the golden apples of the Hesperides, and for his final labor, he descended into the underworld itself to bring back the 3-headed hound, Cerberus. Each labor was more than a feat of strength. It was a journey to the edges of the known world, an encounter with death and chaos, a lesson in endurance. Through them, Heracles became more than a hero. He became a symbol of the mortal capacity to suffer, to endure, and to overcome. His death, like his life, was wrought by treachery and poison, but in his final moments, he built his own funeral pyre on Mount Oeta. As the flames consumed his mortal body, his divine part, the part that was his father's, was released. Zeus carried him up to Olympus, where he was granted immortality and reconciled with Hera, who gave him her daughter Hebe, the goddess of youth, as his wife. He became the only mortal hero to join the pantheon, a god forged in the fires of human agony. Other heroes carved their names into the memory of the world with their own legendary deeds. Perseus, the son of Zeus and Danae, slew the Gorgon Medusa, using a polished shield as a mirror to avoid her petrifying gaze, and from her severed neck sprang the winged horse Pegasus. He rescued the princess Andromeda from a sea monster, and founded a line of kings that would include Heracles himself. Theseus, the great hero of Athens, volunteered to be one of the 7 youths and 7 maidens sent as tribute to Crete to be fed to the Minotaur, a monstrous half-man, half-bull imprisoned in a labyrinth. With the help of the king's daughter, Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to guide him out of the maze, he entered the labyrinth, slew the beast, and found his way back to the light, freeing Athens from its terrible debt. And then there was the voyage of Jason and the Argonauts, a quest that brought together a generation of heroes on the ship Argo, built with the help of Athena herself. Their goal was to retrieve the Golden Fleece from the far-off land of Colchis, a quest set by Jason's usurping uncle. With heroes like Heracles, Orpheus, and the winged sons of the North Wind aboard, they sailed past many wonders and dangers. The island of Lemnos, ruled by women, the clashing Symplegades rocks, and the blind seer Phineus, whom they freed from the torment of the Harpies. In Colchis, Jason, with the crucial help of the sorceress Princess Medea, who fell in love with him, yoked fire-breathing bulls, sowed a field with dragon's teeth, and defeated the warriors that sprang from them, before finally lulling the sleepless dragon that guarded the fleece and stealing the glorious, golden prize. Their return was fraught with betrayal and sorrow, as Jason later cast Medea aside, leading her to a terrible vengeance that included the murder of their own children. The quest for the fleece was a story of ambition and its price, of glory won and love lost, a microcosm of the heroic age itself, brilliant, tragic, and unforgettable. But the greatest war of the heroic age, the war that would signal its end, was fought not for a fleece or a monster, but for a woman. It began with the wedding of the mortal hero Peleus to the sea nymph Thetis. All the gods were invited, save for one, Eris, the goddess of discord. In her fury, she tossed into the feast a golden apple inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." The apple was claimed by Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, and to settle the dispute, they turned to a mortal judge, Paris, a prince of Troy. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera offered kingship over all men, Athena offered wisdom and victory in war, but Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris chose love, and in doing so, set in motion a chain of events that would lead to the 10-year Trojan War. Helen was already married to Menelaus, king of Sparta, and all the suitors who had once sought her hand had sworn a sacred oath to defend her marriage. When Paris, abusing the sacred laws of hospitality, took Helen back to Troy, Menelaus called upon that oath. From all across Greece, the kings and heroes gathered, the proud Agamemnon, brother of Menelaus and high king of Mycenae, the cunning Odysseus of Ithaca, the aged Nestor of Pylos, the mighty Ajax the Greater, the swift Achilles, greatest warrior of his generation, who was fated to die in the war, and countless others. A fleet of 1,000 ships sailed for the coast of Asia Minor, and for 10 long years, they laid siege to the mighty, walled city of Troy, ruled by the aged King Priam. The war was not merely a conflict of men. The gods themselves took sides, their own rivalries and passions playing out on the battlefield below. Hera and Athena, slighted by Paris's judgment, favored the Greeks. Aphrodite, Ares, Apollo, and Artemis supported the Trojans. Zeus attempted to remain above the fray, but was often pulled into the conflict. The Iliad of Homer tells not of the whole war, but of a few critical weeks in its final year, focusing on the wrath of Achilles. When the Greek commander, Agamemnon, insulted him by taking his war prize, the maiden Briseis, Achilles withdrew from the battle in a rage, and without their greatest warrior, the Greeks began to suffer terrible losses. The tide only turned when Achilles' beloved friend, Patroclus, wearing Achilles' own armor, was slain by the noble Trojan prince, Hector. Consumed by a grief as powerful as his wrath, Achilles returned to the battlefield with a terrible, divine fury. He routed the Trojan army and, in a climactic duel, killed Hector before the gates of Troy, then dishonored his body by dragging it behind his chariot. It was only the intervention of the old King Priam, who came to Achilles' tent by night to plead for his son's body, that finally moved the hero to pity and allowed for Hector's funeral. Soon after, Achilles himself would fall, struck in his vulnerable heel by an arrow from Paris, guided by Apollo. On a quiet island, far from the echoes of war, the god Dionysus, the last to join the Olympian pantheon, walked through a vineyard at twilight. The air was warm and heavy with the sweet, intoxicating scent of ripening grapes. He was a god unlike the others, a god of ecstasy and madness, of wine and theater, of the wild, untamed parts of nature and the human soul. He had been born twice, once from his mortal mother Semele, who was consumed by Zeus's true form, and again from Zeus's own thigh. He had traveled to the edges of the world and back, and his worship was not one of simple reverence, but of surrender, of losing oneself in the divine frenzy. As the stars began to appear, one by one, in the deep purple sky, his followers, the Maenads, began their gentle, rhythmic dancing, their movements fluid and hypnotic, their voices raised in a soft, wordless chant that was not a call to battle, but an invitation to dream, to let go, to be carried away by the gentle, powerful current of something greater than oneself. It was a different kind of power, one that did not rule from a high throne, but that flowed through the blood and the earth, a reminder that even in the age of law and order, the wild, ancient magic of the world had not been entirely tamed. As the centuries turned and the age of heroes faded into the mists of memory, the Olympians themselves began to change. They did not age, for they were eternal, but the nature of their presence in the world began to shift. The great temples still stood, their marble columns gleaming in the sun, their altars receiving the smoke of sacrifices. The festivals in their honor continued, the Olympic Games for Zeus, the Dionysia for the god of wine, the Panathenea for Athena. Priests and priestesses performed the ancient rites, and oracles, like the famous Pythia at Delphi, still delivered the cryptic words of Apollo to those who sought to know their fate. But a subtle distance had grown. The stories of the gods walking openly among mortals, of intervening directly in their wars and their loves, became tales of the distant past. The intimate, often tumultuous relationship between the divine and the human evolved into something more formal, more structured by ritual and prayer. The gods became concepts as much as persons. Zeus was the sky and justice, Athena was wisdom and strategy, Apollo was the sun and reason. They were still worshipped, still feared, and still loved, but the raw, immediate, and sometimes terrifying presence they had once embodied seemed to recede, like a tide pulling slowly away from the shore. This was not a sudden departure, but a gentle, gradual transformation, a quiet evolution of belief. Philosophers in the agoras of Athens and other city-states began to question the old stories. Xenophanes mocked the idea of gods who looked and behaved like fallible, magnified humans, arguing that if oxen could paint, their gods would look like oxen. Plato, while using myth as a vehicle for his ideas, proposed a world of perfect, unchanging forms, of which the physical world was but a shadow, suggesting a divinity that was abstract and philosophical rather than personal and passionate. The Epicureans believed the gods existed, but dwelt in a state of perfect, blissful tranquility in the spaces between worlds, completely unconcerned with the petty affairs of humankind. The Stoics saw the divine as a kind of universal reason, a logos that permeated all things, a far cry from the quarreling family on Mount Olympus. The world was also growing larger. The conquests of Alexander the Great spread Greek culture across 3 continents, but in doing so, it brought the gods into contact with the deities of Egypt, Persia, and the East. Syncretism began to occur. Zeus was equated with the Egyptian Ammonius, Aphrodite with Isis, Hermes with Thoth. The distinct, powerful personalities of the Olympians began to blur, their edges softened by this cross-cultural exchange. They were becoming part of a broader, more universal tapestry of belief. And then came Rome. The rising power from the Italian peninsula did not destroy the Greek gods. It adopted them, absorbed them, and refashioned them in its own image. Zeus became Jupiter, the stern father and lawgiver. Hera became Juno, the protectress of the state. Aphrodite became Venus, the mother of the Roman people. Ares became Mars, the revered and disciplined god of war, second only to Jupiter himself. The myths were translated, quite literally, into a new language and a new cultural context. Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, retold the old tales with a Roman sensibility, full of wit, irony, and a deep appreciation for their poetic beauty, but often stripping them of their raw, primal power. Virgil, in the Aeneid, used the gods as instruments of a grand, imperial destiny for Rome, their actions serving a nationalistic and political purpose far removed from the personal caprices of Homer's Olympus. In this new Roman world, the gods became symbols of state power, of civic virtue, of imperial ambition. Their worship was often a matter of civic duty rather than heartfelt devotion. And as the Roman Empire expanded, it encountered ever more diverse and compelling systems of belief. From the east came the cult of Mithras, a secretive, masculine religion centered on the slaying of a cosmic bull. From Egypt came the worship of Isis, with its promises of personal salvation and rebirth. And from a small, troubled province called Judea, came a new, revolutionary idea that there was only one God, an invisible, all-powerful deity who demanded exclusive worship and offered not just a place in a shadowy afterlife, but eternal life and the forgiveness of sins. This new faith, Christianity, began as a persecuted sect, but it spread with a relentless, quiet power. Its message was profoundly different. Its God was not a being of human-like passions, but of pure love and judgment. Its stories were not of adultery and vengeance, but of sacrifice and redemption. It offered a direct, personal relationship with the divine, unmediated by a pantheon of specialized deities. Slowly, inexorably, the new faith began to challenge the old. The Olympians did not put up a fight. There was no great, final battle between Zeus and Christ, no thunderbolt hurled from heaven to strike down the cross. Their retreat was as quiet and gradual as their arrival had been cataclysmic. One by one, the oracles fell silent. The great statue of Zeus at Olympia, one of the 7 wonders of the world, stood in his temple, his ivory skin growing dusty, his eyes staring out at an empty hall. The sacred flame in the temple of Vesta in Rome was extinguished. The rites were forgotten, the prayers ceased to be spoken, the temples were abandoned to the elements, or converted into churches, their marble columns now supporting roofs under which a new god was worshipped. By the edict of the Emperor Theodosius in the late 4th century CE, pagan worship was officially outlawed. The ancient gods were declared demons, their myths dangerous fictions. The long reign of Olympus was over. The gods faded from the belief of humanity, their names becoming stories for schoolchildren, subjects for artists and poets, archetypes for psychologists. They had moved from the realm of active faith to the realm of cultural memory, from religion to literature. But they did not die. How could they? They were immortal. They simply moved. They retreated into the landscape from which they had sprung, into the whisper of the wind through the olive trees, into the sparkle of sunlight on the wine-dark sea, into the deep, silent shadows of the forests, into the timeless, patient stone of the mountains. They became the spirit of the places they had always loved. Apollo was in the warmth of the sun on a summer afternoon. Poseidon was in the rhythm of the waves on a deserted shore. Artemis was in the silence of the moonlit grove. Pan, the great god of the wild, was in the simple, sudden joy felt by a solitary traveler upon hearing a shepherd's pipe echoing in a distant valley. Their stories, their essences, were woven into the very fabric of Western consciousness. They re-emerged with glorious force during the Renaissance, as painters and sculptors rediscovered the beauty of the classical world. They inspired the poets of the Romantic era, who saw in them the sublime power of nature and the human spirit. They were analyzed by scholars like Carl Jung, who understood them as powerful archetypes of the collective unconscious, eternal patterns of human behavior and emotion. And in our modern age, they live on in countless retellings, in novels and films, in comic books and video games. They are a shared language, a deep well of symbolism from which we continue to draw. The journey of the cosmos, from the formless void of chaos to the structured, vibrant world of the Olympians, and then to their quiet retreat, is a story of cycles, of beginnings and endings that are never truly final. It is the story of power seized and power relinquished, of fear and love, of creation and destruction, all moving to the slow, patient rhythm of the fates, who spin, measure, and cut the threads of existence for gods and mortals alike. In a quiet, sun-dappled grove in Arcadia, where a clear spring bubbles up from between the mossy roots of an ancient oak, time seems to have stood still. The air is warm and fragrant with the scent of damp earth and wild flowers. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves overhead, creating a soft, shifting pattern of light and shadow on the ground. A single butterfly, its wings the color of a stormy sky, flits lazily from one blossom to another. This is a place that remembers. It remembers the touch of a nymph's foot, the sound of a satyr's laughter, the presence of a god passing through in the form of a gentle stag. It is a place where the old magic still lingers, not as a force to be worshipped, but as a memory, a feeling, a deep, abiding peace. To sit here is to understand that the gods have not vanished. They have simply become quiet, folded back into the landscape, waiting, dreaming, as the world turns, and turns, and turns again. And so the great story of the Greek cosmos, for now, finds its gentle, unresolved ending. The halls of Olympus are silent, draped in the soft, gray veils of time and memory. The thunderbolt of Zeus rests, its brilliant energy dissipated into the calm, electric potential of a summer afternoon. The trident of Poseidon lies still, its power transformed into the eternal, rhythmic pulse of the tides. The helm of Hades is but a shadow among shadows, a part of the peaceful, all-encompassing darkness that welcomes all at the end of the day. The Fates, the three ancient sisters, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, continue their endless, quiet work in a place beyond places. The spindle turns, the thread is measured, the shears wait with infinite patience. Their work is not done, for the loom of existence is vast, and new patterns are always being woven, new stories always beginning, even as others softly fade. The journey we have taken, from the yawning void of chaos to the dreamlike retreat of the gods, now settles like fine, golden dust in the quiet room of the mind. Let the images drift, the first starlight over a newborn world, the gentle sway of the golden fields of the age of Cronus, the soft, lapping waves on the shores of Crete that cradle the hidden god, the serene face of the moon that Artemis once claimed as her own. Let them blend and merge into a tapestry of calm. The breath of the listener becomes the gentle wind that stirs the leaves in the sacred grove. The heartbeat becomes the soft, distant drum that guided the dances of the Curetes. The slow descent into sleep becomes the gentle, willing descent of Persephone, a yielding to a necessary and peaceful darkness, knowing that dawn, in its own time, will always return. The myths remain. They are not gone. They are in the starlight that has taken countless years to reach us, telling stories of ancient fires. They are in the soil, rich with the memories of all that has grown and returned to it. They are in the deep, quiet well of dreams, where gods and heroes still walk, their voices a soft murmur beneath the sounds of the modern world. So, let the weight of the ages, the struggles of heroes, the passions of the gods, all soften now, and fade, and blur into a single, peaceful, silent note that hangs in the air, a note of acceptance, of rest, of eternal, dreamless sleep. The story is over. The telling is done. The night is deep, and full of peace.